Deus Ex Invisible War is the perfect example of why success is the worst teacher. This is the immediate sequel to the original Deus Ex, and it really feels like they just tried so much because being experimental in the last game worked, but alas, there's no real thing in this game that's new that I liked. And if anything, I feel like this squanders the legacy of Deus Ex because while it hasn't been overtly retconned, Deus Ex Invisible War is the final piece of the Deus Ex continuity until something else steamrolls it. To give you the context of Deus Ex Invisible War, this game takes place several decades after the events of the first Deus Ex in what's called the Collapse. After J.C. Denton did whatever he did, which, well, they did give the Deus Ex game a canon ending through this game, everything's kind of screwed, and now there's a bunch of splinter factions vying for control of the world. And you play as someone who's named Alex D, and I'll just spoil it, D is for Denton. So yeah, you are something of a chosen one type. This game also, we're going to get into this towards the end when I talk about stability and optimization, but this game does not run on modern systems unless you have a total conversion patch on it. So don't bother trying to get it to run as administrator or in compatibility mode. I tried nearly every combination of that and none of them worked. But the Visible mod, shout out to those guys. They made it work. So let's start with the lore categories of the review. Invisible War gets a 4 out of 10 for plot. The plot is incoherent and there is so much intrigue that it is impossible to follow even if you're trying. While you might say, oh, it's more interesting. It's like, I really don't care about the deep state proxy war between Starbucks and Pete's Coffee and Tea. And additionally, with all the factions doing all the things that really don't matter in the end because, well, you might make fun of Deus Ex Human Revolution's ending as a press button to decide the fate of the world, it's pretty much the same thing with Invisible War, like right before the ending. You press button to see who you fight through, and then go from there. Really, you're going to need to read synopses to figure out what's going on here. As far as plot holes goes, there's probably some in there, but the story is so confusing that you probably walked right over them if you play this, and you wouldn't even notice. But as far as world building goes, it gets a 7 out of 10, only for its pedigree. This takes place in the world created by the original Deus Ex, but other than that, that world is otherwise squandered. It's interesting to see what happened with UNATCO, the Majestic 12, seeing who these new factions are that have arisen from the ashes of the previous factions, and what really happened to the world after JC did the thing. But there's really not much that sets it out on its own. And I don't know how to put this, but why are the Knights Templar recruiting in a mall? I don't even have anything else to say about that. As for the looks, graphics 8 out of 10 asterisk. This goes to the Visible mod. A lot of the textures have been overhauled and more representative of what was in the cinematics for this game, and I really didn't get a good look at all the stuff turned off because if you're running the mod, you may as well run the overhaul for all the other stuff. It looks pretty good given its medium, and this was allegedly a very console-ified game compared to the predecessor, which, interesting fact, the original Deus Ex did come out for the PlayStation 2 and it had less compromises than this game had. We're gonna get more into those compromises in the gameplay, but as far as like actual graphics goes, it's not too bad, but again, this is not the work of the developers. As for aesthetics, 4 out of 10 because it just looks like every other cyberpunk dystopia. It's like, yes, I know that could describe most of the Deus Ex series, but like it's got Deus Ex Human Revolution has like all those mechanical Augs and a very interesting like all those golds and like hard lights on it. The original Deus Ex, it had that whole like sort of secret agent feel to this. I don't know what's going on here. It's generic sci-fi. Like that's about as well as I can describe it. Sound design, lots of early OO's music, so if you're into that, you'll like it. But the Foley effects are nice, and the voice acting's okay. I'm almost disappointed that Invisible War doesn't really have that so bad it's good voiceover effect. Like, that was a big draw of the original Deus Ex, is that there were a lot of things that were very unintentionally funny and became a sort of so bad it's good type sort of situation. And I feel like we're missing out. Now, as for core gameplay, 3 out of 10. Just bleh. There are modifiers, but the biomods really suck, especially compared to the previous biomods. You get these items, they're pretty much like level up tokens that you can put into each individual skill. You have a set of skills where you choose one particular discipline for each part of your body, and you're eventually going to pick the same skill set. You're either going to go hard into the drones or you're going to go hard into stealth tech. And I reached my max level or fully modded out about halfway through the game. So once you have your tool set, you're not going to change it much, except towards the end of the game when all the enemies get super tanky, you're going to pick up a rocket launcher and that'll be your thing. Other than that, this game does universal ammo, and there is only one game ever that has done a good job with universal ammo, and that is not this game. On top of that, stealth is really not very good with feedback. Aside from occasional audio cues, I can never quite tell if I was in stealth or on things. It seems like this is very heavily inspired by like Thief style of stealth, where like look for the carpet, look for the shadows, but half the time you don't know if you're fully concealed unless a guy's shooting at you. And there are some modifiers for stealth, particularly the robots will see you no matter what. I guess I got infrared. However, you can get a biomod that makes you invisible to robots, which I kind of feel that's kind of cheap for stealth. That's like an I win button. Which, yeah, you have to put a lot of points in there if you wanted to not slurp up all your energy, but once you got that ability, stealth was a cakewalk because between the human people, which are basically a crapshoot if they're gonna see you or not, but a couple shots from a pistol and the humanoid targets are down, whereas the robots are going to take planning. And if you can become invisible in front of all the robots and turrets, that takes a lot of tension out of the stealth gameplay. Now, as far as player character handling, oh, thank God, I did not initially say player candle, but I guess that's a tradition in these reviews now. They move around okay. The climbing is kind of hokey, but it's a staple of like those late 90s, early 00s games where you gotta awkwardly hold space to shimmy up. The menus are weird. You have to click a bunch of times to get everything to work, and the menus just feel bad overall. And the controls get unresponsive at times. Like, definitely it kind of feels awkward switching guns. Inventory management sucks, and you'll often find yourself throwing stuff on the ground to organize your inventory. As for diversity of gameplay, it's Deus Ex. Stealth it, speech it, shoot it. It's pretty good for that sense, but most of the time you end up in the same spot anyway. You're likely going to pick your style of play and not deviate from that, especially because you will eventually find out that if you want to switch skills, you have to get rid of all those skill points. You can't transfer skill points, you overtly abandon them. So that seriously discourages experimentation, because it's not like, oh, I can get those back later. It's, oh, I have to like now give up biomod canisters that I would have used on someone else to get those skill points back, which I feel is just a terrible move that heavily discourages experimentation and the emergent gameplay that made games like Deus Ex so popular in the first place. Okay, so that leaves the quality of life categories, optimization, and stability, and I am going to set a new precedent here because of just how terrible this game was to record and run. If your game needs any sort of total conversion mod in order to be playable, it gets an automatic 0 in the quality of life category. That is minus 20 points total. And you're thinking, wow, that's harsh, but it's a pretty egregious problem if your game is non-functional unless modders save it. And unfortunately, that means certain other games that I'm planning on reviewing in the near future or possibly far future are going to take a pretty nasty hit. However, I think that's fair, because if you can't be bothered to get your game running, why should I be bothered to make your game work? However, I'm going to talk about the faults of this game's stability anyway. Does the game boot quickly? No. Do levels load reasonably fast? Heck no. In fact, there's this weird thing this game does where I guess back in the day, of single processor CPUs. They thought it was a good idea to save processing power, but this game relaunches itself every time you load a level. It exits the application and runs a new application in order to load the levels in faster. Not only does that not work, but it crashes nearly any recording software you might be using to capture this game. So I have to be super careful just mashing my toggle key on shadow play in order to get this game in one piece. Am I bitter about it? Yes. This was originally 121 different files before I combined them together. And that's for an 8-hour playthrough. There was an average of about 4 minutes and 12 seconds per individual file. That is ridiculous. Oh, why didn't you use OBS? OBS just dies if you try to play it like this. And Fraps hasn't worked since Windows 7. What matters is I got it working, and if you're another YouTuber who happens to be seeing this and you want to do some sort of critique on Deus Ex Invisible War, I am going to host my gameplay footage on some site for you to download, and you'll be on your honor if you actually played the game or not, but I don't want anyone to have to go through the horrible time it was that I had to play this game and record it. So look for that in the description. But as far as stability, frame rate, not very good. The game does freeze a lot, especially between those levels. It desyncs a bit sometimes. It's just like how you can tell the sounds are playing off time. And again, you need a mod to get this to work. What does this bring the final score to? 41 out of 100. Most of the points this game gets belong to the Visible mod. If I were to take those away, this game would have nothing going for it. But because someone cared about this game enough to completely fix it and pick up the slack for the original developers, this game gets a better score than it deserves. Thank you all so much for joining me. I think this is about the halfway point for the Bad Game Bonanza, so let's see if I survive this. Support my Patreon so I can get therapy afterwards. Sign-offs are stupid and I don't know how to do them. Bye. Oh god, my voice is so sore. Cat, what are you doing? What are you doing? Oh no, I think he's trying to get to his tower. Do you need assistance? What are you doing? Does this terrify you? I think he's just trying to get up to the tower. And this is probably gonna spook you because, oh no, the monster can fly. Did I do you a frighten? Maybe I just need to move the boxes so that you can go and get to your tower. Or are you just lurking under these box caverns now? I think he's lurking. Are you lurking? Hey, you just show me your butt? Yes, those are the weights that make sure that you don't knock over the cat tree and die. Oh, you want the bubble wrap, don't you? I can see why that box is very enticing. It's a box in a box in a box. That's a lot of box. Okay. Took this box out. I just hit the camera. And look, you can jump in now. Alright, I get it, you're not feeling it.